The Russian ruble has dropped to its lowest value this century as continued Russian sanctions and Putin's war machine cook the Russian economy. Just what does this mean for the Russian consumer? And does it appear that Vladimir Putin is intervening personally in the central bank's decisions? Seems like the answer is probably yes. I'm going to break it all down right now. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Okay, so the story is available in one chart. There it is, right? This represents the 1-year chart of the ruble's value relative to the US dollar. Remember, guys, the US dollar is unique in that it is the currency for international transactions. So it's taken as kind of a universal benchmark. And remember, the United States, we've got inflation under control in our country. So the dollar's value, remarkably consistent. The ruble's value, showing some signs of stress, I'd say. As you can see, that it actually stabilized at around almost 1.1 cents per dollar, rubles per percent, basically. The ruble is almost worth a penny in August and then has been on a steady decline. In fact, in November, a round of U.S. sanctions caused the market to devalue the ruble even further, making it worth literally 0.8 of a penny. But don't worry, it came roaring back, 80% of a penny, excuse me. But then it came roaring back to almost 1 whole penny. But recently, despite Russian central bank deploying its remaining foreign currency reserves to try to stabilize the Russian ruble, it's continued its collapse and is now less than 0.9 of a single penny. And this kind of crisis, and that's really what this is as bad as things have ever gotten for the Russian ruble. You can see here, we can actually zoom back. This is a chart of the inverse, right? This is the US dollar trading against the ruble. And you can see pretty clearly from this chart that what we're seeing is the largest closing day level of the ruble relative to the dollar ever. So again, you can see that the ruble was worth about 101 US dollars on the close of February 2022 at the outset of the war. And then you can see here we are, December 2024 at 105. And you could see going back to the year 2000, this is literally as bad as things have ever looked for the Ruskies. And before we talk about why I think Putin is actually directly intervening in Russian central bank decisions, what I think is going on here, I want to mention a couple of things. First, hit that subscribe button. That makes a difference. But more importantly, do you want access to uncensored combat videos that are sent to me directly from the front lines from many of the soldiers operating there? Well, that is available for members on combatvetnews.com. You guys know that even as Russia tries to buy off influencers, the U.S. actually, we talked about buying their own influencers. I'm not for sale. I'm supported by you guys. But I depend on you guys over on Combat Vet News, right? This is my version of Patreon. Twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, I drop uncensored combat videos that YouTube won't let me show you. So sign up, become a member. Link is in the description. I appreciate all you guys that do. Okay, so this is what I thought was also really, really interesting and probably explanatory for this price collapse. It's this right here. Ta-da! Bank of Russia keeps the key rate at 21%, right? And this is from the Bank of Russia itself. According to the Bank of Russia, so Russia's board of directors decided to keep the key rate, this is their interest rate, sort of like their version of the Fed rate, at 21% per year. Now, you may notice that our Fed rate, when it was at an unbelievably, unprecedented height, was at 5%. So this Russian rate is 4 times higher than the Fed when it was on its all-out crusade against inflation, right? And this is because as the Russian ruble becomes worth less and less and less, you need more rubles to buy shit. More rubles to buy shit means prices of goods have gone up. So when you go to a Russian grocery store, you see that what used to be cheese that costs 800 rubles now costs closer to 1,600, right? So to the average Russian consumer, they're experiencing a massive inflationary crisis. Now, what did the Fed do to fight inflation? Well, the answer is the Fed, of course, raised interest rates. Why? Because what they're trying to do is soak up money out of the system. They're trying to effectively, like a sponge, absorb the dollars. When there's too many in the system and not enough goods for them to chase, right? You have to soak the dollars out of it. And by offering a huge interest rate, making it very expensive to take out a loan to get more money in the system, and making it really appealing to put your money in the central bank or into central bank securities, that both sort of functions to help soak up money that's in the system. And so it's very strange that in December, the Russian central bank, which up until this point has pursued a pretty stable policy of keeping the interest rate at 21%, said, actually, guys, things are great. Monetary conditions tightened. That's good for fighting inflation, more significantly than envisioned in October. The result of these effects of factors autonomous from monetary policy. And then he said, according to the Bank of Russia, given the notable increase in interest rates for borrowers and the cooling of credit activity, the achieved tightness of monetary conditions create the necessary prerequisites for resuming disinflation processes and returning inflation to target. Basically, Russia said, even though inflation is still high, there's been slightly less loans going out. Therefore, we beat inflation. Congratulations, we did it. And this is pretty weird. The Russian central bank is pretty good at their job, and they certainly are good economists. Reputationally, they're one of the best central banks in the world. So it's very strange to have them sort of prematurely declare victory over inflation, right? And it's very strange. According to Russian central bank's forecast, the monetary policy stance, annual inflation will decline to just 4% in 2026. Right? Now, again, we've talked about on this channel before that the official inflation numbers, 11% in annualized terms, pretty bad. And the fact that Russia thinks in just 12 months it's going to be down to 4% is pretty impressive, or delusional, depending on your stance. But we looked at some of the prices in Russian supermarkets from Russian vloggers, and we've seen that that inflation rate looks more like 25%, particularly, and imports are even worse. And so, why would the central bank suddenly become, a dove? Suddenly believe inflation's been beaten? And the answer, well, let me see if I can pull this up here. They may have quietly told us the answer. You see, I think that they're trying to signal this wasn't our choice. See, they said this is the result of effects of factors autonomous from monetary policy. What that means is I think they're trying to obliquely indicate to other finance professionals that factors we can't control have dictated this decision. It's their way of saying, I think, that, hey, the Kremlin are the ones giving us orders to do this. And they're saying to their financial colleagues in other countries, you understand that we don't have a choice and that you should price the ruble accordingly. And that appears to be exactly what the market has done. When we look up the last month of prices, you can see that, again, this December 21st decision, well, again, December 20th, they decided, hey, let's keep the rate as is right there. So there's where it happened. And you could see initially the market said, great, good news. And then slowly they said, wait, I think they're serious. And there's also reports that when they made this rate, the Russian did some foreign currency reserve stuff to help stabilize the ruble. And now it's boop, 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 boop. Having a bad day. Anyway, guys, that's really all I had for you. A huge thank you to the Colonel Tier members of CombatVetNews.com. Folks like Bill Collier, Robert Colburn, Gars Martin, Eugenia Cresta, Chris Gorsuch, Fred Sicarius, AL90, Petra Taru, as well as all of our Lieutenant Tier members. I couldn't do it without you guys. You guys are the ones who make this whole thing possible. I appreciate you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.